Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another stimulating session of Higher Ed for All. Myself, Krishna, I'll be your host for this session. I extend my heartfelt welcome to the guest speaker of today, Dr. Rhiddhi Saha, and to all the participants. Now, before we begin here, there are a few directions to keep in mind. So please mute your audio during the presentation and turn on your video if possible. Questions can be dropped in the chat box, and you can also ask your queries directly to the speaker towards the end of the session. Feedback form will be shared towards the end of the webinar, and e-certificates will be provided only if you fill the feedback form. So please keep that in mind. So to let you know about the outline of this webinar, we all know that storytelling has been, an integral part to human communication since the ancient times. So it has been captivating audiences and leaving an everlasting impression in our minds. So when applied to presentations, a storytelling can engage emotions, connect deeply with our audience, and we would be able to make our messages resonate profoundly in their mind. So this session today, Tell Tales, storytelling techniques to deliver impactful presentations. In this captivating session, we will explore the profound influence of storytelling on presentations, and we would be also delving into the techniques that can transform our presentations into unforgettable experiences. By the end of this webinar, I'm sure we all will be able to analyze the tools and understand the knowledge where we will be becoming master storytellers, delivering presentations that has the power to inspire, inform, influence, and leave a lasting impact on our audience. Now, let me introduce the speaker of the session. Today's speaker, Dr. Rhiddhi Saha. She's a gold medalist in her BA and MA programs, NET JRF holder in linguistics. She is a person who possesses certificates in a wide-ranging subjects like digital learning, phonics, psychology, and many more. Having 6+ years of experience, she's a passionate teacher and a researcher with proven record of linguistic competence building in the ESL context. She's currently working at Asutosh College, Calcutta. Ma'am, we are pleased to have you here as a speaker today. I now request you to take over the session. Ma'am, please.
Hi. Thank you, Krishna, for a very wonderful introduction. However, I am not very sure if you're going to become master storytellers by the end of this, because let me tell you that, when I had to teach a course on script writing, I just did it once in one semester, and my children had to basically write a script for some TV show, and I was trying to model something for them and write something for them, by the end of which both me and my students realized I do a bad job at it. Okay, so I am not very sure if you're going to become great storytellers, but I am kind of sure that you will be having some hang of, how to do it. So yeah, without much ado, let me just try sharing my screen so that we can begin. And just let me know, if my screen is visible also. So my topic today is, as it reads, it's Tell Tales, storytelling techniques to deliver impactful presentations. So it's about storytelling and how you can literally use storytelling in your presentations. So presentations like the one that I'm doing now. So let me begin by asking you, how many of you love listening to stories? And I'll put my chat on so that, I can get your responses on the chat. See, I want this to be interactive. I don't want to lecture. Just tell me how many of you love storytelling. How many of you listen to stories as children? Just answer me in the chat. You do. Who else does? Krishna does. Who else does? How many of you listen to stories as children from your parents or from your grandparents or from someone that you know? None of you? I'm talking to an audience which doesn't like storytelling. Okay, Shogato does. Who else does? Not a lot of you. Okay, Tushar also does. Okay, some of you do. All right. Okay, many of you do. All right. So, how many of you? So, we have all listened to stories as children, right? But right now, as adults, also, some of us listen to stories. I don't know about you, but my husband does. Every night when he sleeps, he listens to ghost stories on the radio. I mean, on some channel which used to come on radio. So right now he listens on his phone on YouTube. Okay, so storytelling is something which people have shared a common interest for, over the years. We never grow out of storytelling. We never grow old enough, okay? We are never really weaned from stories, if you look at it that way. So ever since the history of civilization, people had always gathered around the fireplace, talking, chatting, telling each other stories and listening to them, right? So this was a very ideal place for communication because everyone would be there, around the fireplace. And at the same time, this was also a very effective way of communication. So that's the entire idea. Later on, if you look at the time when TV came into existence, the entire family would be gathered around the TV watching these serials. Okay. Ramayana and all of these things that used to come, Mahabharata and all of that. So the entire idea is everyone would sit together listening to a story being narrated. Earlier by a person in front of a fireplace and later in front of the TV. Okay, so the TV which was giving out the story. So storytelling is in fact a very, very ancient art, which belongs to the humankind. If you look at recent developments neurologically, storytelling, in fact, has very positive influences on the human brain. So this is a representation. See, the way our brain processes information is, we process information through certain patterns, set patterns in the brain. And we call this pattern schema. So brain processes information through schema. And when we listen to a stories have a defined structure, that our brain knows. So what happens is when we listen to a story, the brain just knows that, okay, this is what I can process. And so the information is consolidated in the brain. When we listen to information without the structure of a story, information is pretty scattered. So if you look at the picture, see, this is without storytelling. A lot of information being bombarded, but basically not much that you're being able to take in. And this is a structure with storytelling, okay? You are being provided information and that information is getting consolidated in the brain because, there's a story associated with it. And story is a pattern, a schema that the brain can recognize. All right. Now, this is something that I can give you a very quick example of also. If you suddenly see the picture of food, some tasty food, you feel like your mouth's watering, right? So what really happened? You saw something and instantly your brain sent an impulse, okay? And you feel like you're experiencing it. And that is exactly what happens in storytelling. When we hear something, we feel like we are experiencing it. We are in the process of it. You hear something, you hear that some wonderful food was being cooked and all the delicious aroma of the biryani, and you feel like, oh my God, that's my biryani, right? So you feel like you have to experience it. You are experiencing it. So that is how storytelling really consolidates information in your brain. Now, this is what I have to talk to you about storytelling, how it's an ancient art, and what are the benefits of storytelling. Now, let me take you to the other part of my, presentation title, which is to deliver effective presentations. So let me take you to the usual, tradition of delivering presentations, let's say. So I am a foodie and I wanted you to feel hungry. So I basically used this story to invoke your hunger. Jokes apart, this is exactly the structure of a presentation in a very traditional format, right? So the basic structure is you have an introduction, which is the top one. You have the body, which is basically the patty in between. And then you have the conclusion, the bottom one. Now, if you look at it, so let me just give you an example of this kind of presentation. We all have seen this kind of presentation actually. All the time we see these presentations. So let me give you a quick example. So if you have to present on stress management and not giving up on hope, let's say, okay? So how to manage stress and be resilient. Let's say this is the topic of your presentation, all right? How are you going to go about that in this structure? You begin in the introduction section by saying what is stress management. In the body, you talk about what are the different ways of managing stress at the individual level or at the organizational level, what kind of workshops we can conduct or whatever it is. And in the conclusion, you sum up the points and you say something like, well, there is stress is inevitable in life, but at the same time, stress can also be managed. And beyond all of that stress, there is always hope because we will overcome all the difficult circumstances. So we have to be resilient. So this is actually the ideal, the traditional structure of a presentation. I won't comment on whether it's ideal or not. But when we listen to a presentation like this, sometimes it can get a little boring for us. So what I'm trying to do in this presentation is basically to teach you how to spice up this burger. So how to add the peri peri masala, right? So what I'm going to talk to you now about is basically the peri peri masala to your burger. So these are certain storytelling techniques, certain ways to tell stories that you can incorporate in your presentation so that your presentation becomes a little spicy, okay, and a little more interesting for people. So the first technique that I'm going to talk to you about is monomy. Monomy or the hero's journey. So what's basically this? This is basically a structure of a story where there's this person who is in an ordinary life, and then this person, just moves out of that ordinary life, has a greater calling, and he meets a mentor or whatever happens in his life. He meets new people. He has some realization, some greater realization in life, and then he comes back. So see, this is that little person, ordinary person in his known world, and then he goes out into the unknown world, and then he has this greater realization in life, and he becomes a larger person, and then he comes back to his known world to spread that knowledge. So a typical example is, let's say, Lord Buddha, right? So he was a person in a family, and then he went out, and then he got his enlightenment, and then he came back to society to spread that knowledge. You understand? So this is the structure. Now, how can we incorporate this structure to talk about the same stress management and resilience PPT presentation that I was talking to you about? Any answers, any suggestions? Can you tell me? How can you talk about the same topic of stress management using this structure? Anyone? I can give you examples, but I want you to tell me first. Any suggestions from anyone? Or you can just unmute and tell me. You don't have to write a story there. Just unmute and tell me. It's fine. Intrapersonal communications. Yes. Yeah, definitely. So we can, talk to other people, and yes, right. We can do that. What else? Okay. So let me give you an example, right? Okay. So someone is saying by introducing a character and showcasing his journey and of combating stress management of combating stress. Yes, yes, yes. Graphic illustrations of someone who actually went through stress and turned out victorious out of it. Okay, so let me give you an example, okay, how we can do it here. So let's talk about this thing. So if I tell you that, if I begin the presentation, by saying that when I was a child and I was in school, I used to be someone who used to panic a lot. So when I had a lot of deadlines, assignments, these and that coming my way, I didn't know, how to manage things. And I was bogged down by a lot of things, family issues with my parents, my studies, these and that. So a lot of things really. When I went out in my graduation, to pursue my studies in Lucknow, I met a whole new set of people, and some of my friends, in fact, came from extremely underprivileged background. And I saw that some of them were working around the day, and they were working to send money to their parents, and then at the same time they were managing their studies. And at the same time, I saw that, they were the same people who used to say towards the night, in the during the winters, कि चलो bonfire करते हैं. So they never felt that, life was stressful. They never had that outlook to life. They were like, ठीक है, जो होगा देखा जाए. So I absolutely learned a lot of things when I went out of my little home sphere to this larger sphere of the world. And when I came back to Kolkata again after my studies, and I came home, I was already a changed person. So my students who I meet now, I tell them that things can go wrong in life. There's a lot of stress, but life sorts itself anyway. So this is the kind of structure, that you can use just to introduce the presentation or throughout the course also, right? So you can just introduce this and say, so today I'm going to talk to you about those tips that I learned on my way through the course of my life. So this is, how you can incorporate a story into a presentation, right? So this is just one of the structures. We have many more such. The next one that I'm going to talk to you about is the mountain structure. So the mountain structure is basically, it actually looks like a mountain, all right? So tension rises, 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 reaches the peak, and then it starts coming down, okay? So basically, you understand, there's a lot of tension building up, and then finally there is some solution, or if there is no solution, what happens in the structure is the tension starts building up, building up, building up, and then at one point it gets resolved, and resolved towards the negative or the positive. ऐसा नहीं है कि mountain में it's always a positive resolution. It might be negative also, but it gets resolved, and finally there is a resolution state. Okay, so it starts coming down, and finally there is a resolution. So an example of this structure, in a stress management PPT can be this. So back in 2018, I was going through my, or back in 2016, I was going through my master's examinations. It was around the same time that I had my first heartbreak, and things were getting really, really tough. So one night I was just standing there in the balcony and thinking that life's really too much. There's so much stress from my family, in my relationship, related to my studies. And there were a lot of politics in the university, also, student politics and this and that. So I was under a lot of stress. And I just felt that maybe I just need to leave all of this and go back. But right at that time, I saw this little cat, at a distance, trying to climb a wall. And it was really little, really small. And it was, trying and falling down, trying and falling down, but it never really gave up. And so I thought that if this cat doesn't give up, why should I? I have to deal with it. There will be stress. I have to manage it. But I have to be resilient and I have to get over every failure and work towards success. So, in this presentation, I'm going to tell you what are the tips that I have used to work towards success in my life. I'm going to share my knowledge with you. So, this is how you can also introduce the presentation using a mountain structure of storytelling. The entire idea is not to make it drab for your audience. You tell a story so your audience is interested in whatever you are saying. The third structure that I'm going to talk to you about is nested loop. So we did hero's journey, then we did mountain structure, and now we're doing the third one, nested loop. Look at the structure. It looks somewhat like an onion, right? So what happens is basically there's a story within a story within a story. You understand? So multiple layers to a story. So how can we apply this to our stress management and resilience PPT? Let's say I begin the story. I begin the presentation by telling you that when I went for my graduation, I went for the first time to the hospital, and I felt that there was a lot of stress because I was away from my family. I had to meet strict deadlines of assignments. I was not getting fish, my favorite. I was starved. I was sad, and I was overwhelmed. So, I was facing a lot of stress. So I called up my mother and told her that, Ma, I just want to come home. I just can't do this anymore. And she told me, well, I had a friend when I was studying in Kolkata in college. And this friend basically came from the villages. And he was really poor. And he used to, work as a taxi driver during the day, listen to recorded lectures at night, and then he used to sit for the exams. Our friends were not very kind to him. They used to bully him. Okay, taxi driver, taxi driver. The teachers were not very kind because he didn't have very good attendance anyway. Nonetheless, the friend made it, and he made it big in life. He used to, my mother said that he used to tell my mother, okay, when I just can't take it anymore, I just sit and meditate. I just sit and listen to music. I know that when I'm all to myself, I'll be able to handle things better. So, this is a perfect example of a nested loop. I was telling you the story of me talking to my mother. Okay, so the first story was that me being in college. Okay, for the first semester, I was in hostel for the first time. The second part is me talking to my mother on a particular day like that. Third story, which is nested within that story, is my mother's friend's story. Okay, which my friend is basically, my mother's friend is basically telling her. So one story nested inside another large story, and so on. Okay, nesting. So this is another structure that you can use. The fourth structure that's there is basically called spark lines. Okay, and this is one structure where you have a clear ownership. Okay, this is propounded by Nancy Duarte, who worked, who used this for marketing purposes actually. And spark lines is a structure which contrasts two realities. Okay, what is there in the present versus what can be. Two realities are constructed. Okay, so what is and what could be. What is versus what could be. So, many great speakers, okay, political speakers have used this, to mobilize audiences, to mobilize people by saying, see, you have this now, but if you elect us, we are going to give you this, right? So, we have heard these things from them. How can you use it for this resilience PPT, stress management and resilience PPT? What you can say, it need not be a PPT, it can also be an oral presentation. It's just about, how to use storytelling in the presentation, whatever kind of presentation it is. So how are you going to use it? You can say something like, well, what do we do when we are stressed? Some of us stop eating. Some of us eat too much. Some of us stop sleeping. Some of us sleep too much. Some of us get into a zone where we stop talking to people. Some of us feel it's literally the dead end. Some of us simply give up. But when your boss gives you that extra work and you still have fever, when your teacher gives you another additional assignment deadline, when you already have 3 more on that day, what is it that you could do instead of, feeling bogged down and feeling pathetic about life and feeling that you can't do any work at all? Maybe you could, first of all, take time to, sort out your personal deadlines so that you would be able to meet them. Maybe you could have, just looked at your own working capabilities and then, divided the work in such a way for your days so that you could meet certain working deadlines every day. Or maybe if things are completely impossible, you could just request your boss or your teacher that, see, this is kind of humanly impossible for me at this juncture, so could you please? Not that they would always listen, but maybe if they don't listen, your HOD would, or your HR manager would. So there is always some way. So in this example, I showed the difference between what a person does in stress versus what a person can do when they can manage stress effectively. Right. So the contrast between what is and what could be. That is basically spark lines. The next technique that I'm going to talk to you about is in medias res. So in medias res literally means in the middle. And if you look at the picture, it's basically a guy being thrown in the middle, dropped in the middle, right? So what literally happens is that you drop a person in the middle of a story, and then you go back and give the background, and then the story progresses in its own course and moves forward. You understand? Mane, the story doesn't move chronologically. Okay, it starts in the middle, goes back, and then goes forward. These are things which are common to literature students actually, but I'm talking about it in terms of presentation. So what happens in media res storytelling? So let me give you an example from my topic of resilience. All right, managing stress and building resilience. So if I say it was a night of and I'm giving you similar examples to show you how you can use the same incidents in different structures also. Okay? So if I say it was the night of July 9th, 2020. I was standing in my balcony, absolutely devastated, thinking life is not going to go anywhere else anymore. I was having constant altercations with my parents, my husband. Academic work was overwhelming. College was giving a lot of professional work also. Things looked like they would never shine again. What really happened in 2020 was the COVID-19 pandemic. In the first place, I spoke to you about that one night of 2020. Then I'm going back and giving you the background of what started at the beginning of 2020. So what really happened towards the beginning of 2020 is the COVID-19 pandemic. We were all locked indoors. We didn't have any opportunity to go out. People were frustrated. They were absolutely devastated. They were all cooped inside the house, all together, working and preparing their own food and doing everything. So it was a very, very difficult scenario. And then, on July 9th, I had this huge altercation with my parents. And then all of that surmounted to what happened on July 9th night. So I basically went back and now came to the middle. And now I'm going to proceed with the story where I say, so I was standing in the balcony and then I saw this cat constantly trying to climb the wall, and I saw that if the cat doesn't fail, so won't I. So you understand. So you basically drop the person in the middle. The person can't understand why, what happened on July 9th. क्यों ये मरने गई थी? You understand? That's the kind of scenario. And then you go back and say, Acha, this happened. And then I handled it this way. You understand? So in media stress, it's a very unique style. But the thing is, you shouldn't give too much detail. If you give too much detail, then the audience will know where this is going. So you shouldn't give that. The next one is converging ideas. Converging ideas basically means, as you see those light bulbs, they are basically aapki dimag ki batti. So multiple ideas coming together to form one, consolidated thought process, to give you one consolidated realization. So let me give you an example from my example, okay, of stress management and resilience building. So the example is, so it was the first semester of my graduation. It was the first semester of my master's. I was for the first time in the hostel, and I had just gone out for my master's, and I was in the hostel for the first time. And life felt really blue. I had a lot of academic pressure. I had pressure from my family. I had a lot of stress, and I was also going through a bad breakup. So around that time, because I share everything with my mother, I basically called her up. I was standing in the balcony and I was calling her and telling her that, Ma, I just want to go back. I don't want to be here anymore. And my mother told me, what's the worst that can happen? If you can't cope there anymore, you come back at the end of the semester. At least give it a fair try. Right at that time, I saw this cat trying to climb the wall and failing repeatedly, but not giving up. I thought, maybe my mother was right. I was still ruminating when my roommate came out crying from the room and told me, Didi, Dadaji nahi rahe. So her grandfather passed away, and she said she had an exam actually the next day, and she said, "Oh my God, how is it that I'm going to study right now?" And I heard myself telling her, "Ki beta ho jayega," and I also heard myself telling me, "Ki Riddhi ho jayega." So no matter how difficult the times, no matter how much stress is there on us, we will find ways to overcome it. We need to be resilient. So, in this, I basically converged three ideas. My mother telling me that, this cat I saw as inspiration, and my roommate's life. Three ideas coming together to form the central idea that stress needs to be managed at every level, no matter how difficult the times, resilience has to be achieved. Right. The next one here is false start. So false start is another technique that I'm going to talk to you about. So false start, as you see right in the picture, you see a person trying to enter a door. He bumps into the door, literally falls out of it, and then he has to enter through another door. उसे पता है कि अच्छा ये दरवाजा तो नहीं खुलने वाला है. I have to enter through the other door. You understand? That is exactly what happens in a false start. When you give your audience the impression that they are moving towards a particular direction in the story, and then you give them a bump. No, that's not the direction. And then you change the direction and they go into a different direction of story. Why do we do this? We do this to give the audience a jolt, okay? So that the audience just knows that, the audience is brought back to you. Maybe the audience is elsewhere, thinking something else. But then right at that moment, when you give them that jolt, their attention is brought back to you. You understand? So they take interest. Ki, Acha, ye to wo nahi bol rahi hai, she's saying something different. So that's the idea of false start. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that stress management and resilience presentation. I begin that by saying, when as a child, I have always been very popular with my friends. Even when I went out to do my graduation and masters at FU, I went out from my house and I went there. I had a lot of friends there too. We had a very vibrant campus life. We used to hang out every day. We had a lot of fun. Everyone really liked me in the class. No day was ever boring. However, at the same time, I had a lot going on in my life that I couldn't share with anyone. I was away from home. I had the pressure of socialization. I have always been an introverted person till then. And I had to I had this immense pressure of assignments, of doing well in academics, of not failing. There was so much that I could never share. There was so much stress. So when I begin my stress management and resilience presentation like this, see, initially I was telling you how wonderful my life was, how popular I was, how chirpy I was, how fun loving I was. So you felt, acha, just talking in this direction. And then suddenly I gave you a bump on the door and you came back because I told you, no, I wasn't that happy. I was in stress. So this is a false start. You give a different kind of impression and then you give a jolt and attract the audience's attention, and then you go along this particular line, the one that you want to talk about. The last structure here that I want to talk to you about is a petal structure. Literally resembles the petals of a flower. What this structure is about is that there are multiple stories which have the same central theme. This is different from converging ideas because in converging ideas, you have multiple ideas which build up to the same realization. These are multiple different narratives, not within the same story, different narratives, different stories happening, which have the same central theme. Let me give you an example from the PPT I was discussing. So, if I say in this presentation of stress management and resilience building, I'm going to begin the presentation by talking to you about three moments of my life when I was in a lot of stress. The first, when I was appearing for my class 12 chemistry exam, I felt, oh my God, I'm gone because I was pathetic at organic chemistry. Somehow I just saw the paper, it was bearable, I wrote, and well, I ended up with an 89. All right, I didn't score a 90, but I sailed through. The next time, when I felt that, oh my God, I simply won't be able to, is when I had my first heartbreak. I felt, no, 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 never. I'll never be able to love another man. Oh, hell, my list. Over. I fell in love the next time within 1.5 years. The third one was today morning when my husband basically got very angry with me because of certain things going on in the household. And he told me, I don't want to stay with you anymore. I was very, very upset because a lot was going on. Okay, I was very busy also working on this. So I started crying and I was I felt that, oh my God, now what's this new thing happening? Within 15 minutes, he came back and said, listen, I overreacted. I was hungry. And when I'm hungry, I'm angry. So, what I'm trying to tell you is through all these situations, I realized that no matter how difficult the times, things work out. Life sorts itself. No matter how stressful it feels at a particular juncture, things definitely and evidently work out. So in this, I basically used three different stories that have the same theme. This is the petal structure, right? So these are the structures, some of the structures of storytelling that you can use, but definitely this is not a comprehensive list. All right. But I showed you how you can really spice up that drab burger of presentation using some peri peri masala of storytelling techniques. And what I'm trying to, get to here is that when usually people present, people who listen feel really, really drab. Okay, so their faces are like that red face. Oh my God, ye kab khatam hoga? But through storytelling, what we can do is make their red faces, yellow faces, the ones that you see. Ki chalo, kuch to entertaining ho raha hai. I'm learning something. So see, what I am telling you today, possibly there's a high chance that you're going to retain a lot of it because I am giving you concrete stories for them. Stories help us remember and also help us enjoy whatever we are listening to. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation, but I am not going without asking you a quick question. The question is, I spoke to you about a lot of storytelling structures today. Let me just quickly give you the names. monomyth, mountain structure, nested loops, spark lines, in medias res, converging ideas, false start, petal structure, 8 structures. Tell me which structure did I use in my PPT? Which structure did I use in my PPT? Quick. Petal, because I gave you multiple stories with the same theme. Or what else? Did I give you stories on the theme of storytelling? Or what else? Petal to a certain extent because I gave you multiple stories. What else did I use? What else did I prominently use actually? Nested loops. Yeah, so well, this is another thing. You don't have to just stick to one particular structure. ऐसा नहीं है कि I have to do only this. I'm a follower of this structure. It's not that. You can, actually use a mix and match, an eclectic mix. What really I did was see my central, wait. So thank you. This is the thank you slide. I wanted to show you this because you have been a kind audience, but I want to take you to something else. So yeah, what I really use is, if you look at this, see, I use this basic structure of presentation versus every other structure. So basically, I showed you a spark line. What is if it's a regular presentation versus what could be if you use these particular structures. Yes, so converging ideas of that use multiple of them, but yes, the guiding structure was that of a spark line in my case, right? In fact, a multiple spark line, you can say, what could be I showed via multiple variations, right? So I'll stop sharing my screen, should I? Because I've completed.
Yes, ma'am, you could stop.
Thank you. I hope I didn't bore you, though my storytelling techniques are not very great.
No, ma'am, not at all. Like for me, because I'm a person who has been reading stories for quite a young age, and I'm a teacher who's teaching English literature and language. So stories have been part of my life for so many years. So it was not at all boring. And I'm supposing that for our audiences as well, it wouldn't have been boring because they have been hearing, stories. As grown-ups, it's very difficult to listen to the stories. We might be people who are reading them, but listening is something that is not so practical when we are busy with lots of other things. So there's 40 minutes, 45 minutes, I think they also would have been, really enjoyed this presentation. So let me take this moment to thank you, ma'am. Thanks to Dr. Rhiddhi Saha. I'm sure because all the participants would have really profited from the treasure of thoughts that you have put before us today.
Thank you.
Quick note towards the audience. Please note that the feedback link has been shared in the chat box. So is the social media links and the website link of Higher Ed for All. Please do click on the same to know the latest updates of Higher Ed for All. So we are now.
I will take any questions. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, please. Yes. So we are open for queries and feedbacks also. So there are 2 ways in which you can communicate. One is by unmuting yourself. You could unmute, raise your hand. You could share your views, opinions, queries, feedbacks, whatever it is with our speaker. Or else you could also type your thoughts in the chat box. We'll take up from there. Ma'am, as the audience is trying to put their thoughts in the words, I have a query that was there in my mind, right from the moment you entered the 8th structure. So it is like there are so many different ways in which we can tell a story, right? So how will I decide which frame of story or which narrative frame chooses me? How do I make the choice? Is it based upon the audiences to whom I'm delivering it? Is it based on the context in which I'm talking, or is it based on the subject matter that I'm going to deliver? or is it solely on me that I have to make a choice? So how do I choose my narrative style?
Yeah, I think it might be based on audience to a certain extent, but it is majorly based on the content that I'm talking about, right? Because let's say if I'm going to present for an organization, and let's say I'm presenting for an organization in order to collab with another organization. So I want to tell them, ki, Acha, right now you have a website which looks like this, but if you collab with us, we can make a website which looks like this for you. So there you have to use Sparkline. It's a natural connection. You have to use Sparkline there. Similarly, if you're, giving a speech where you want to tell people, how well you have done. Let's say children, when they are in class, sometimes, children, when they don't want to study, these kids say, ma'am, tell us how you studied so much and you're doing this. We also want to do this. The studies are so boring. How are we going to go through all of these? So children, they want to listen to a lot of stories. So that time, the teachers are heroes for them, right? So that time you have to, the immediate choice is the hero's journey. Even though you haven't been that great a hero, but you kind of put it like that. Acha, main to tumhari tarah choti thi. I was a very simple girl, and then I was as scared as you all, but then I did this and I did that, and blah blah blah. Right. So yeah, and each structure lends itself to certain functions if you look at it. So Sparklines helps you give a contrast. Mountain helps you, build a story to the climax and then bring it down to really build that tension. Monomyth helps you really, talk about an inspirational thing and, inspire others. Converging ideas gives you an opportunity to say how multiple ideas come together to form one unique idea in the mind. So each of them have different, functions. However, I would also say that it's also a matter of choice because see, I basically use the same kind of backgrounds to establish each kind of storytelling technique. So yeah, it's also a matter of choice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't see a lot of questions. I don't see any. No questions, only stories. Only stories.
Okay. So participants, if you don't have any queries, you could also post your feedbacks now, how you felt, because, we have been hearing stories, the same kind of story, but in different frames. We have in different narrative frames. So you could also take a, time to give your valuable feedbacks also. And please do not forget about the feedback form, which you have to fill. The link is there in the chat box.
I see a lot of my kids here. You guys forget to fill in your own exam registration forms. Don't forget to fill in this feedback form.
Okay, so I think that there are not...
There is a question. There is a question. Are there any specific exercises you recommend which would help me effectively converge ideas in my storytelling? Well, one thing that is traditionally recommended is, of course, meditation. When you can think from multiple perspectives and you are all on your own. So, you can increase your concentration and that helps you think from multiple perspectives to focus. That is one thing. Another thing, that is in vogue right now in the West is something called mindfulness techniques. Mindfulness techniques is basically, so usi ka Indian version is meditation. Kind of, so mindfulness techniques are, so when we meditate in the Indian Shastras, basically you think of some particular deity and you meditate. In mindfulness, it's a little different. It's a little, atheist in its style. So you basically, sit in a particular posture. So you sit in a chair. The way you sit on a chair, you just sit like that. Relax your body, close your eyes, and you just slowly take in your breath and slowly breathe out. And what happens in that is you start focusing on your breath stream. And when you do that, slowly all the noises of the world disappear. You are constantly focused on your breath stream. It's easier in a sense from meditation, because meditation you are focusing on an abstract entity, you see, but here you are basically focusing on something which is happening inside your body, on your breath stream. So it becomes a little easier for people to begin with. And when you do that, you can focus your thoughts. And when you do that, you can also get thoughts from multiple directions. Okay, so these are concentration techniques I'm telling you basically. So when you do that, it helps to cut out the noise outside and really think things from multiple perspectives. That's what I'm trying to say.
And ma'am, language also holds a great importance in storytelling, right? So what is your viewpoints on that?
I didn't get you. Could you repeat?
Language also holds a great importance when we want to narrate a story, anything it is, whichever language that we want to communicate. So,
Yes.
The way we have to communicate should be in the level. Our audiences might not be in the same level as we are, framing our thoughts. So how can we actually overcome that kind of barriers?
Barriers of the audience
Language.
level, you mean to say?
Yes, yes, exactly. Because I'm personally, I'm a person who's taking classes for 5th standard as well as 10th standard. So right after the first period, I might have to a class after the session in the 10th standard, I might have to go to the 5th standard. So how come I put myself in that level when I have to come from 10th to 5th standard?
Yeah, in terms of storytelling, I'll give you examples from my own life. So what I was doing during my PhD was I was teaching this. I made a new grammar model for my PhD, which I was applying on students of multiple age levels. Okay, and seeing if the model works on them for proficiency building. So in that, I was teaching students in Kendriya Vidyalaya for some time who were in class 9th and 11th. I was also parallelly teaching adult learners at FU Lucknow who were, like most of them were of the age of college students, let's say the majority. Okay. So, and I told stories to both. So, when, resilience was an issue, so resilience is often an issue in the classroom, right? Students are very bogged down often. So when I was talking to these people of class 9th and 11th, I used to tell them, ki, when I was a child, I also had a lot of academic assignments. And हमारी भी एक ऐसी टीचर थी, वो भी बहुत डांटती थी, बेटा मत वो करो, ठीक है, teachers डांटते हैं, but that doesn't mean कि it's going to be very difficult. It's fine. And these kids are just into relationships. So I used to tell them कि अरे ऐसा हमारे साथ भी होता था. I also had crushes and then all heartbreaks because they didn't like me back. It's all fine. Okay, when you have to kiss a lot of frogs to finally kiss your prince, so chill. So that was the kind of story I would tell them. When I would go to this classroom, in FU, people had more serious issues in their lives going on. Some of them were struggling with finances and this and that. And that time I used to tell them that, even when, so that time, I was in my PhD and most of my friends were working. It used to feel so bad that whenever they came, they used to pay for the food and everything. I could not because मैं तो बेकार थी ना. They were earning and I was not doing anything. I was researching. I didn't have a penny. I was living on my parents' money. So I used to tell them कि see ऐसे situations होते हैं, हो जाएगा. Sometimes, it just takes time. We're going to get out of it. And then also I used to tell them stories from my parents' life, which were very relatable for their circumstance. I used to tell them कि see, my parents also, they came from a very decent, financial background, but they made it big. And the way I am growing up, my parents have never grown up that way. So, people struggle, but people eventually make it through. So in your context, if you're talking about class 5 kids versus maybe class 9 kids, the difference can be, when you're going to class 5, you talk about the kind of problems that these kids have and how you overcame them at their age. And when you're going to class 9, you talk about those kinds of problems. So something that is relatable. Until and unless the audience can relate, they will not be able to, preserve it in their memory. So,
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So, if there are any queries, shall we come to the close of the session? So, I'm thankful to the speaker once again, Dr. Rhiddhi. Thank you, participants, for your comments and feedbacks. So Before concluding today's session, let me remind you once again to fill the feedback form. It's very much important if you want to get your certificates. Okay, so go to the chat box, get the link, and also please visit the websites of Higher Ed for All, and you could know so that you would be able to look into the recent updates of this particular group, Higher Ed for All. So hoping that this enthusiasm and support will be there in the future events of that will be held by Higher Ed for All. Thank you. Good night.